folks, and welcome. This is Dan from Tabletop Gaming Guild. Today I'm going to be doing a basic rules overview for Clank in Space. Clank in Space is a deck building game. In this game, we represent various ne'er-do-wells who have invaded the capital ship of Lord Erraticus. Lord Erraticus, of course, is a big bad who has dominated most of the galaxy with an iron fist. We're not here to revolt against him or disrupt his rule. We are just here to get into his vault, steal one of his favoritist artifacts that is accumulated throughout the galaxy, and get out with our hides intact. To set up the board, the first thing you do is you determine which modules you want to do. This board is modular, and it has 3 of these hexagonal shaped tiles here. They're all double-sided, so you can shuffle them around and put them in different spaces and flip them over to be different locations. But I'm just going to set up the default setup that the mod here on Tabletop Simulator has given me. Players put their player tokens in this start space. The artifacts are put on their starting spaces over here in the command module. If playing with only 2 or 3 players, not all the artifacts will be in play. The bounty hunters and the blockade token go on this track, as does this Lord Erraticus token. He goes on this track based on how many players are in the game. You will also shuffle this big deck of cards here. Deal 6 cards into a trade row. This goblin card will always be here, as well as these 3 cards, Boldly Go, Phaser, and Memory Core. And we'll get into that. The other thing you need to do for the board setup is set up the major and minor secrets. Give them a good shuffle. The major secrets are the ones with these purple spotty backs, and they will go out onto these spaces that just have the single question mark. The minor secrets just are smaller tokens and are just plain white, and 2 of them will go onto each of these spaces with the double question mark. Each player has a deck of 10 cards to start with. You will shuffle your deck and draw 5 cards to be your opening hand. The first player to go puts 3 of their Clank in this Clank space over here. Second player puts 2. Third, if there is one, puts 1. Fourth player, 0. On a player's turn, they're going to effectively play all their cards. And their cards will give them various resources. Each starting deck does start with 2 of these stumble cards. If you play one of these stumble cards, you just take a Clank from your supply and add it to this Clank space. One of the other resources that you can have in your hand is, of course, energy, seen on this hack card. I've got 3 total energy in my hand, and this is what it costs me to spend on cards in the trade row. All of these cards that are face up over here are available for me to purchase. Some might be out of my price range. This information broker costs 4. You can see the cost of a card in the lower right hand corner. However, I can buy this G2 laser sword, which only costs 3. Looking at these cards, you can see the cost, as I mentioned, is there in the lower right. There may or may not be a green number in the upper right. There is on this G2 laser sword. There isn't on this registry hack. The green number in the upper right indicates a number of victory points that the card is worth at the end of the game. The symbols across the left indicate resources that the card generates during your turn. This laser sword generates the laser sword resource, which you can use to bypass the enemies on the board or defeat the goblin over here. He costs 2 energy swords to defeat, or defeat other monsters that might show up on this trade row, like the security officer. In the upper left-hand corner of chart, there can be a faction tag. This information broker belongs to the Outlaw faction. This Jiddu laser sword belongs to the Resistance faction. This Android assistant doesn't belong to any faction. There's no tag in the upper left-hand corner, but you can see a green symbol in its text, and that indicates a special ability if another science faction card is played with it. That works the same here. This is an outlaw card that will do something extra if you have another outlaw card the same turn that you play this. Some cards might have acquire abilities. This account hack here, at the very bottom of the card, you can see that when you acquire this card, you get 2 credits. Credits are these chips that are right here on the board, of course. At the end of the game, each credit that you have in your possession is worth a victory point, but you also might want to spend them. When you purchase a card, say I'm going to purchase the registry hack with my 3 energy, you add it to your discard pile. Just wanted to highlight that there are 3 cards over here that have a deep supply. It is finite, but there's quite a number of them available. Costing 3 is this Boldly Go, and it provides 2 energy and a boot. Costing 2 is this Phaser, a fully automated zapping robot, which provides 1 energy and 2 laser swords to allow you to better defeat enemies. And then over here is this Memory Core, does absolutely nothing, costs 7 energy to acquire, but as you can see in the top right, is worth 5 victory points at the end of the game. The trade row is replenished when your turn ends. So if my turn end was over now, I'd flip this card into the trade row, and this card would become available for the next player to potentially purchase. At the end of your turn, you discard all the cards you've played, all the cards that might be remaining in your hand as well, and you simply draw back to 5. Like most deck building games, if you need to draw a card out of your draw pile, but there simply aren't enough cards available for you to do so, then you take your discard deck, flip it over, shuffle it into a new draw pile, and continue drawing. One thing that can happen at the end of each player's turn is a boss attack. You see here on MonkeyBot, there is a picture of Lord Eradicus. That's the pink rectangle on the right side of the card. When a card with a Lord Eradicus icon on it is flipped into the trade row at the end of the turn, a boss attack is triggered. To do a boss attack, you take all the cubes that are in the Clank space, toss them into the boss bag, give it a shuffle, and then draw cubes out of the bag based on where Lord Eradicus is on his track. So if he was here right now, 2 cubes would be drawn out of the bag. The bag starts with a certain number of black cubes. Black cubes basically means a miss and or nothing happens. Those can be simply discarded. If a player's cube gets drawn out of the bag, it goes up here onto this damage track. If a player's damage track fills all the way to this skull symbol, they are immediately KOed. If a character is KOed and they do not have an artifact yet, they are eliminated from the game. They are also eliminated from the game if they have accumulated artifact, but they are KO'd before they get back to the cargo bay, which is this area over here. This is if a character gets KO'd in the cargo bay, they are still eliminated from the game, but they get to count their score at the end. If you're KO'd before you get an artifact, or before you get your artifact back to the cargo bay, you're KO'd and you don't get to count your score at the end. You're out of contention for winning. A KO'd player does still take a turn after they are KO'd. On a KO'd player's turn, they will simply draw 4 cubes out of the boss bag, potentially dealing damage to the remaining players in the game and making everything just generally more difficult for everyone else. If you're playing only 2 players, then the eliminated player is drawing 6 cubes out of the bag instead of 4. So one resource is this boot here, like we see in the upper left corner of access. Boots basically indicate movement. Movement takes place on the central board. When you move, you have to move between connected rooms. Rooms are connected by the lines here, and the rooms are the white spaces. So 1, 2 would be 2 spaces of movement. There's a couple of symbols on the map that modify movement. There are these foot tokens. To move between those 2 spaces costs 2 boots. There are these lock spaces. Players cannot move through lock spaces unless they have this master key token. There's 1 or 2 enemies in the hallway. These are low-level minions. To travel from this space here to this space would cost 1 boot, but I would also have to take 2 damage. I could negate the damage by spending laser swords, which is another resource that you can have in your hand. You spend a laser sword to negate 1 damage that way. There's also 2 ways to get around quickly. One is these blue spaces, which represent a conveyor belt. If you move into a blue space, you can immediately, and without using boots, move to any other conveyor belt space. If you do, however, your character is considered dizzy and can't move with boots for the rest of your turn. These teleplats represent a teleport network that function similarly. If you move into a teleplat space and have this telepass token, you can immediately, and without using any boots, move to any other teleport space. Except, again, your character is dizzy and can't move with boots for the rest of your turn. These spaces marked off with the red lines represent security checkpoints that your character has to carefully sneak through. As a result, if you move into a security checkpoint, you cannot move further with boots for the rest of your turn. One other way that players can move through the board is by teleporting. You have to play a card on your turn that specifically allows you to teleport. An example of this is the Android Assistant. If you play this card with another science card, you get the special rules text there at the bottom that says you may teleport to an adjacent space. If you are on a space and you are allowed to teleport to an adjacent space, you still have to follow the lines, but you get to ignore any symbols on those lines. So if I was here in this security checkpoint and I could not move with boots because I entered it during my turn, I could still use teleport to move over here. I could also use teleport to move over here, and I would not need the master key token because I am teleporting. I could also move from example here to here without discarding laser swords because I bypass the enemies in the hallway. The only other rule about movement is that the command module is locked. There is no way to get into the command module without a command passkey. Moving around the board, you might run into some spaces that have things on them. If you walk into a space with a minor secret, you just take the top most minor secret that remains, flip it face up and put it into your play area. This happens to be a attack potion. I can basically spend this token on my current or future turn to add 2 swords to my resources that are currently available to me. Ditto for this speed potion. There's a summary of the various tokens that you can reveal on the back of the rulebook and also on this reference guide that's posted in this mod. Major secrets work the same way. There's a huge health potion, but you can see that there are some other things that you might be able to find. One special note is if you find this archive token, again, it just goes into your player supply and you keep it for the end of the game. It's worth 3 victory points, but if you find an archive, the Lord Erraticus will move up 1 step on his little boss track because you've found a valuable piece of data that increases the ship's security level. If you enter a space with a heart symbol in it, you found some medical supplies, hooray. You get to remove a damage cube from your track and add it back into your personal supply. If you enter a space with a credit symbol in it, you just collect that number of credits. If you enter a space with a power crystal in it, such as this space, you collect a power crystal from this supply over here. The number of power crystals in the game is limited, so there might not be a power crystal for you to collect, but if there is one, you grab one. These spaces with the M in them are market spaces. If you're landing on one of these spaces, you don't have to end your movement there. You could just be passing through. You can spend 7 credits to pick up one of special item tokens in the game. As we've previously gone over, the master key allows you to pass through locked doors. The telepass gives you access to the teleport network. Medkit just gives you a 2 health healing insta bonus. The contraband, some cards will care about the contraband token, but more than that, you're spending 7 credits, which is worth 7 points of the game, to get 5 victory points for these 3 items, plus a bonus. The contraband is worth 10 victory points at the end of the game that you're only spending 7 to get. So it's got that advantage as well. The other thing you need to do as you're moving around on the map is hack terminals. Each of these green icons indicates a possible terminal for you to hack. When you hack a terminal, you'll take one of your data cubes, which are transparent in the physical version of this game. You'll put it on the terminal that you're hacking, and then you'll take the bonus and or penalty for that terminal. These 3 terminals all give you some number of credits when you hack them. This symbol is the symbol for Clank. That's not immediately clear from the rulebook, but yeah, if I hack that data terminal, right, like if I was here and I hacked this data terminal, I would also add one of my cubes to the Clank space. You can also gain health by hacking terminals. While hacking terminals, you cannot hack multiple terminals in the same module. So here I've put a data cube in the Doomsday Cannon, which is this hexagonal area here, I would need to step over here into the med lab and hack this terminal to get rid of my second data cube. Once you have hacked two different terminals into different modules of the board, you get your command code token. And whenever a player gets their a command code token, or Lord Erraticus goes up his little track here, there is no way by rules to enter the command module of the starship without a command code. You can't walk in. You need the security passcode to walk in. You can't use the conveyor belt to get to this space without a command code. You can't even teleplat in. You need the command code to gain access to these teleplats. You need the command code in order to get to an artifact. Once you have gotten into the command module, if you're on a space with an artifact, you can choose to pick up that artifact. You can only pick up one artifact, though, so you don't have to pick up the first artifact that you land on. I could land on this artifact that looks suspiciously like a Game Boy, and I could choose not to pick it up in favor of this weird canister-looking thing because it's worth more points. This Game Boy is only worth 5. This canister is worth 15. When a player does pick up / steal an artifact from the command module, once again, because the red icon there, Lord Erraticus goes up a step. Once you have picked up and acquired an artifact, your objective is to make it back to the cargo hold or even an escape pod and get the heck out of here. If you manage to make it back to the cargo bay and manage to land on one of these escape pod spaces without being KO'd, you also take that escape pod token, which is worth 20 points. So managing to escape via an escape pod is worth a little bit of bonus. As players get their command codes and steal artifacts, Lord Erraticus is going to move up this track, as we've previously seen. If he enters one of these spaces, this red bounty hunter cube gets added to the Clank space, and when the next boss attack is triggered, it gets added to the bag with all the other Clank cubes in that space. When a bounty hunter cube is pulled out of the bag, each player remaining in the game will take a damage. When bounty hunter cubes are pulled out of the boss bag, they remain in the Clank space and are returned to the boss bag the next time a boss attack occurs. When a Lord Erraticus gets to this space, you're going to take the blockade token that's in that space and put it here on the board. This blockade token indicates that these two conveyor belt spaces are now no longer connected. So if you're trying to use the conveyor belt to get out of the ship, you got to stop here and then walk. And of course, the top space of the Lord Erraticus track here adds 2 more bounty hunters into the bag for what would be a total of 4, which, let me tell you, is pretty darn dangerous for everyone involved. The objective of the game is then to work your way through the ship, hacking terminals to unlock the command code to access the command module, where you can then steal a artifact and then make your way back out of the ship, back to the cargo bay, and into an escape pod. The players that have an artifact and have managed to escape or have been KO'd in the cargo bay can count up their victory points. You get victory points from tokens that are in your possession. The artifact token that you stole is worth some number of victory points. The escape pod token that you acquired if you managed to escape is worth 20 points. Credits, of course, as I've previously mentioned, are all worth a point per credit. If you have one of these special tokens up here, those are worth points, 5 or 10, as the case may be. If you bought a card that's worth points, then you count up the number of victory points that are in your deck at the end of the game as well. The person with most points is the winner. All right, folks, that pretty much covers it for Clank in Space. If I forgot something or messed something up, please write a comment below, letting me know what I got wrong. I love learning games, but we all learn better when we learn together. Hey folks, thanks for watching. If you would like, do the YouTube things, like the video, or subscribe to the channel. You can also check the links. See you around.